Hey, what's up, Blazer fans? Welcome to We Have a Take, the What podcast. I am Tara Bowen Biggs, and unfortunately, Rose is not able to join us today. But in her stead, I have a guest who I'm really excited to talk to and get to know, and I think Blazer fans are going to be excited to hear a little bit from. The resume here is so deep, I had to write it down, so excuse me for referring to my notes. He is formerly of ESPN and NBC Sports, as well as Bleacher Report, one of the co-founders of Count the Dings, an analyst and reporter for Meadowlark Media. He's one of the hosts of my favorite podcast, Basketball Illuminati. I love that show. And for those of you who also like me are Bravo fans, who might like to watch Top Chef. He has a podcast about that too. And finally, he is the, well, not finally, but one more thing. He is the Blazers broadcasting analytics insider. Tom Haverstow, welcome to the show. It's such a pleasure to meet you.
Oh, it's such a pleasure to join you. Thanks so much for having me.
I feel like I just did a whole show. I had so much to say about you. And that'll do it. Oh, it's
Yeah,
a wrap.
yeah. And on top of that, dad of two beautiful girls, and my dog Piper. She's sitting here right now, German Shepherd. She's joining me for the podcast if that's all right with you.
Oh, we love animals on the podcast. My two cats are in the room as well, so maybe any of them could make an appearance at any time. And it was really fun on a broadcast when the Blazers were in Charlotte. We got to see your family was shown in the pictures. That was super cool.
Yeah, yeah, that was really special. I've had a lot of very memorable moments with the Blazers in my 1+ years with the team. That takes the cake. Anytime I can have my daughters just jumping around for joy watching an NBA game, and they got to meet Brooke, which was like big pinch me moment was watching Brooke Olzendam talk to my daughters. It meant so much to me because I think representation is a very important thing, and for my girls to love basketball and see that you can work in basketball in the NBA is no pun intended, a trailblazing moment to see Brooke with them, and it gives them kind of a little bit of perspective of what can be. And so I don't think I told Brooke that, but I got pretty emotional seeing her with my daughters because they're 8 now. My oldest is 8 now, and my other daughter's 5, and they're getting to that age where they start to really see, what jobs or I want. No longer are they like, I want to be a princess every 5 seconds. They have like different professions or different interests or hobbies or passions that they want to get into. And so now kind of their universe is opening wider and wider and wider. And it's really cool to see when they light up like that. So that was really cool. And I don't get to do too many games in person, and so that one was really special just to see everybody, see Chauncey, see Scoot, see the whole gang, and especially the broadcasting team. I just adore them, and so seeing them in the flesh, it's very a unique position that I'm in, that I do these games remotely, and so it's really great to get some FaceTime.
Oh, that's awesome. Brooke is the best. She just doesn't get any better than that. And I, as a Blazer fan and, longtime, lifetime Blazer fan, I just have been so spoiled by the broadcasters who have represented the Blazers over the years. It's just like remarkable who I've been able to watch over all these years.
Yeah, well, Tara, I got to say, when I was approached by the head of broadcasting at the Blazers a couple years ago, I started asking around, and I was nervous about the interview process, and went through a couple rounds of interviews with the crew, and I was just blown away about how awesome they were. Of course, as a fan, NBA fan and analyst, I've seen the broadcast a ton, but getting to kind of know them behind the scenes, they embraced me with open arms, and they really treated me with not just professionalism, but a real interest in me as a person. And that's sometimes you don't get that everywhere. And I've worked at ESPN, I've worked at NBC, I've worked now writing at Yahoo Sports, where it's all remote, but like um, you don't really get the opportunity to kind of connect on a human level as much as I would like. And so when the Blazers did this whole interview process with me, I just was blown away at how awesome they were. And people would tell me this. Like I would ask people, "Hey, I'm kind of thinking about doing this Blazers gig, and I don't know. I'm doing it from Charlotte, and it's new, it's different. I'm trying to wrap my head around the whole thing, and people kept saying, Tom, you'll never regret this decision because those people over there are amazing. They're amazing people, and they were so right, and I'm so glad that they were right because it's been one of the best decisions I've made professionally.
Oh, I love to hear that. I'm sure Blazers fans all will love to hear that because sometimes as a Blazer fan, we feel like we're a little bit like on the edge of the world all by our lonesome, and so anytime I anyway, hear about, the reputation of the team or the players or anything nationally and it's a positive thing, I get like a little light bulb goes on. It's like, oh, somebody noticed us way over here on the edge of the earth.
Yeah, I just wrote a story about how Victor Wembanyama he unfortunately has this blood clot issue that he's going to be out for the remainder of the season, and I had to write this line of like how much travel he's done, and I had the line of from Portland to Paris, he's traveled everywhere in between, and it really is like Portland is in this corner of the country, and to think that, you know, I'm rereading Breaks of the Game right now, David Halberstam's
Hmm.
book, and it really is a remarkable story how the team got the team in the first place, how Portland, the city. And one fact that I did not know, and this might be the Haberstat for this episode, is that when they won the championship, when they won the finals, the local rating was 96%, meaning 96% of the households in Portland were watching the Blazers. Can you
Wow.
just like
No.
fathom that? Like that had such a grip over the community that people who didn't even know what a basketball was were tuning in because they just love Bill Walton and the story and Dr. Jack. And I can't even fathom anything happening in the world today
Hmm.
that would get 96% of TV homes tuning into the same program. And that's how big the Blazers are. And that's one of the reasons why I have so much fun with the broadcast is, um, social media can be a pretty hateful place and pretty rough around the edges, but the reception I've had from the fans when I've been doing this job has been so awesome. It's been great.
That's so great to hear. So I was watching that 1977 game. I was 8 years old, and my neighbor Dan was he his wife came and asked if I would come over and watch the game with him because they had a new baby and she was afraid that the baby was going to wake up in the middle of the game and Dan wouldn't want to leave the game. And so she asked if I would go watch the game with him and listen for the baby. So at the time, I did not know the team at all. My parents were not into basketball. I came to it later. But I sat there and I watched that game with my neighbor and I listened for the baby and the baby didn't wake up. And so I got to watch the whole game and I got to
Wow.
watch this man who was my neighbor just be like so beside himself and happy and just like with this little like 8-year-old neighbor girl, like not he didn't have anybody to celebrate with except for himself. But it's a very strong memory. And he unfortunately like passed away just like
Mm.
within a very short time of that. But that's a story that his kids, they loved it when I would share it with them.
Oh wow.
Frequently every year I would be like, oh, I always remember, around June, around the, Blazer memory times, I'd be like watching that game with your dad. I wish I had any idea what was going on.
It's amazing. Was that when you got hooked on the Blazers, like that
No, it
moment, or was
wasn't.
it
It
even
wasn't
before that?
for that for me. It wasn't. And it wasn't until later, till I was like in college, really. Like I said, I came to it a little bit late. It was for me. It was like the '80s and '90s, late '80s, early '90s team, and it was. I vividly remember when the Blazers were playing the Detroit Pistons in the finals.
Hmm.
I was living with all these guys, including my boyfriend, who's now my husband, and so they were all watching the finals. And I remember Bill Laimbeer stepping out with the mask on because of his broken nose, and
Hmm.
I thought, "Who's that guy? I want them to kill him." And I
He's like a
felt this like wave of fan energy. It just took me
He's like a
over.
villain in a movie or like in a comic book, or you're just
Yes.
like, who is this evil guy with the
Yes, I
mask
can
on?
get
I want to beat
behind.
him. Yeah.
I can definitely get behind this. Well, that takes me kind of back to what I was hoping to start off with talking to you about, which was kind of what's your basketball origin story?
Oh, wow. My basketball origin story is I have two older brothers who were obsessed with basketball. My dad was he played basketball in high school. He breaks backboards wherever he goes, not because he's Shaq, but because his hook shot is so bad that it just breaks the backboard. It's just he's not very good at basketball, but he has a lot of passion for basketball. And I played basketball through high school. My favorite stat is, I'm pretty self-deprecating. My favorite stat is that I started every game in my senior year in high school for my high school basketball team. We went to the playoffs, state playoffs, divisional playoffs. We were really good. I started every game for them, and I took one free throw the entire season, and I missed it.
Oh my
It
God, that's amazing.
I was that my job was to play hard defense, be Tamani Kamara, shoot threes, and then get the ball to the big men on my team. And I never dribbled or drived. I just the role player. Um, I played with my four best friends. We were really special. We played from like fourth grade all the way to senior year in high school. We were the starters on the basketball team. We were kind of like a cult hero in cult classic and favorites in town because the whole town had been watching me, Matt, Charlie, John, and Joe all the way through since we were in middle school. And so once we became seniors, it was this like really cool thing that we had. And um, basketball meant so much to me. Probably the hardest I've cried in my life. That includes like loved ones passing away. The hardest I've cried in my life was losing the senior year, uh, my season ending, because a little piece of me felt like it died. It was like my basketball team that I had played with since I was in like fourth grade, that I would play outside or at the Y. Such a big part of my childhood was through basketball. And when we lost against New Britain, um, it was traumatic for me. I think because basketball, it is such a team sport, and you need to go through a lot of really low lows to get to where you want to be. And it's really hard. It's really hard to be good at basketball because you can be great, but your teammates, you need to be great with them. And that chemistry and that reliance on teamwork is what makes basketball special. Baseball is an individual sport masquerading as a team sport. You can be on a baseball team, not know 90% of the names on your team, and you're going to be just fine. You get up and it's you versus the pitcher, right? The ball comes to you, you throw it to first base. There's no real interaction in baseball. Whereas in basketball, that kind of chemistry of that sixth sense, that spidey sense that you have on a basketball court with your teammates, it is it is basketball jazz. It is music. It is you guys are on a court and you don't even have to call a play. You're just having this kind of like spiritual connection on the floor. And I love that about basketball. And then I never let go of it. Even now, when I watch the game, I find myself giggling. It's just such a fun sport. When there was a play a couple weeks ago where it was against Miami, where the Blazers like did this like amazing fast break where they're passing it to each other and the ball's in the air, and it was just like a beautiful symphony. It was like they were all hitting the right notes. They knew the timing, and they were in sync in ways that is supernatural on a weird level. It's just like, how did they know that's where they needed to be? And that ball had to be placed there. And to do all those things is just so, it's like magic. And so I love basketball. And my playing days were over. Michael Holton asked me that. He's like, "Hey, Tom, do you play?" And I was like, "Played past tense, played in high school." And one thing about being an analytics guy is people assume that you're just like in spreadsheets all day in Excel and running formulas. I love basketball. I play basketball, and I just think it's the best sport. I think it's the best sport.
Okay, so many follow-up questions.
Yeah, let's
Um,
talk about it.
did you have a favorite team or favorite players when you were growing up?
I did. I was a huge UNC Tar Heel fan. My first screen name, my first AOL screen name was number one heel fan. Okay,
Oh,
Tara.
I love
I
it.
was obsessed with the Tar Heels, and that's because my grandparents lived in North Carolina, and they would send me like clothes and like
Hmm.
UNC shirts and hats, and they loved the Tar Heels. And so I fell in love with the Carolina Blue, Vince Carter, Antoine Jameson, Michael Jordan, of course, before my time as a kid. But I watched these guys and Dickie V, and it was like I was so into basketball, but I was more into college hoops than I was NBA at the time. I grew up outside of New York City. My dad was from Boston, so he was a Celtics fan and tried to raise us as Celtics fans, but I was closer to New York than I was to Boston. And so it's kind of like this NBA orphan, so to speak, where I wasn't as big into the NBA at the time. I was really into college basketball, and you remember, Tara, like college hoops was rivaling the NBA in terms of like fandom and ratings, and it was a different product than it is now. And so I loved the Tar Heels, and the irony is that I actually went to Wake Forest in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, one of the UNC rivals. And so when people find out that I was obsessed, I had when I had hair, I had NC shaven into the back of my head when I was a kid.
Oh, I
Like
love
when I
that.
was like 9 years old, I love this stuff. And so when when I think back on like which NBA team I supported, I would say if I had to say a team, it would be the Celtics, right? The NBA team. But I actually became a Raptors fan for a little while because of Vince Carter. Vince Carter, leaving UNC and going to play for the Raptors and how fun that was with Tracy McGrady and Antonio Davis. I mean, remember Muggsy Bogues was playing for the Raptors back in the day, and I like loved that stuff. And so I have a very different upbringing in terms of NBA fandom than most people.
Yeah, that's very different for me who grew up in Portland. I've only known Portland. I've only known the Blazers. And
Yeah.
your answer was right because you didn't say the Lakers to a Blazer fan. So you are golden.
Well, Celtics, we do not like the Lakers. And so my dad made sure that I was not, he made sure of two things. Don't root for the Yankees and don't root for the Lakers.
Excellent.
Those are his rules.
Those are good advice from your dad there.
Yeah.
So when did you turn to start covering sports and this sport that you love?
Well, unofficially, when I was a kid, I would play Madden and I would take stats and write down the stats, and then I would write game stories about my Madden football games. Me and my
That's
cousins, like
amazing.
I love this stuff. We would sit there, play a game of Madden, like have a stat sheet, like a graph paper, and we would write charts, like how many points did we score in the first quarter, second quarter, how many yards did we have, and we would create these game stories, and we would write it like a newspaper, and we would write it on his computer. My cousin, whose older sister now lives in Hillsboro,
Hmm.
Oregon, outside
Hillsboro.
of
Uh-huh.
Portland. Yeah, she lives there now, and I'm gonna go see her in a couple weeks. Um, we would just write game stories, and I would love doing that. And so when I went to college, I majored in economics, wanted to be in finance and business. I graduated at the worst time for that because there was a financial crisis when I graduated. So I pivoted, sent my resume in at ESPN, and they hired me as like an intern in their stats department. And so I was actually doing a lot more baseball. I was a big baseball fan too, and doing a lot of baseball stuff. And then they were like, "Hey, this advanced stats are really taking off in basketball. Do you want to do that, Tom? Do you know basketball at all?" I'm like, "Do I know basketball? I love basketball." So the line was a lot shorter on the basketball side. And the baseball side was a lot of like, Moneyball and Billy Bean was taking off. And so a lot of folks wanted to be the next Billy Bean. There wasn't a Billy Bean in basketball. And so I was like, you know what? I know so much about basketball from playing it and watching it as a kid. I could do this. And so I applied my econ stuff, my statistics and my attention to data and data analysis, and I applied it to basketball in the same way that a lot of baseball analysts were doing at the time. And it my big break was when LeBron James took his talents to South Beach. ESPN hired me to go down there and cover the Miami Heat, and that's when everything changed for me.
Oh, wow. What a cool story. Again, many follow-up questions. Starting with, it sounds like since the beginning, it wasn't just like the beauty of the game, but you've also always been interested in the stats that get created during the game. That is so fascinating. Did you always have like a math brain? Was it a math thing? Like, what do you think about that, like, drew you to it because it's like, seems like it's been super consistent.
Yeah, I used to like memorize the back of the baseball cards. My dad always said if he told me he learned fractions based on batting averages in
Hmm.
baseball. Like three divided by eight, like he could tell you what that was just because of baseball and like
Yeah.
following baseball. And he's like, sports is if you're really passionate about sports, it just inevitably you're going to learn math at a different level. And so I learned math a lot through sports was adding, subtracting, multiplying, all that stuff. I kind of always loved applying that. How many touchdowns did you score? And how many points did that generate? Oh, I scored six touchdowns, and that's six times six plus the extra point. So that was, and you just do math in your head. And I just loved, shooting percentages. They shot 20 of, 37, 20 divided by 37. I loved that stuff. And, when my entrance exam into ESPN, you'd love this. It's really fun. They give you an exam where they like test your knowledge of sports, but they also test your knowledge for fact checking or like quality control. They'll give you a box score and they'll say there's five typos in this box score. Find them in 30 seconds. And
Whoa.
so so they'd be like, where are the errors in this box score? And you're adding up all the three pointers, you're totaling the
Okay.
turnovers, and you're trying to make all the math work. And that stuff, I thought that was fun. Like that was so fun for me. And so I it just there's something about math and the order of math that really spoke to me, and it was like this language that I just could really pick up at a young age. I'm not a PhD level mathematician or statistician, but that sort of lens to watch the game just really made sense to me.
Hmm. At the same time, you were also a writer and writing stories. So like how have you I mean, it sounds like it was probably perfectly natural for you to like look at how like in the Discord channel I'm always seeing like people talking about like stats to like try to prove a point. But
Hmm.
it sounds like also, one of the important things about stats that I'm hearing from you is that the way that they tell a story.
Yes, Tara, like um when I was in Miami, I did this story about how Dwayne Wade is guarded like a three-point shooter, even though he doesn't shoot threes. Because in the data, it shows that players were defending him like really close when he's at the three-point line. And I found this stat that showed that of the top 10 players that are defended so closely off the ball at the three-point line, nine of them were all-time great three-point shooters. JJ Redick, Shane Battier, Klay Thompson, Stephen Curry, Damian Lillard, all these guys. So good at three-point shooting. And then there was Dwayne Wade. And I remember it was this like eureka moment of like, what is going on here in the numbers? I'm going to go talk to Dwayne Wade. So I went to practice the next day and I said, hey, Dwayne, do you feel this when you're on the three-point line and you don't have the ball? And he's like, Tom, wait, they're guarding me like I'm Ray Allen out there, right? And I'm like, yes. And he lights up and he's like, yes, thank you. I've felt this. I don't know why this is, but thank you for proving what I've been feeling. And this like, it's been bugging me and I don't understand it. And I was like, oh my gosh. And he got so excited to talk about this. And it turned into this story about how defenders are so terrified of losing Dwayne Wade on back cuts. So in the same way that Tamani will cut to the basket behind the play, if you just lose your vision or lose your attention off of Dwayne Wade for a second, half a second, he's gone. And so defenders always had their hand on him to make sure they wouldn't lose him. And I think that's such an amazing story. Is just like the surprise of it all. The You think it's one thing, but then it's another, and that's what I love writing about. Is hey, is it possible that a second round pick that 51 people passed on, 51 picks went by, that in year two, he could be an all defensive player in the NBA? You would never have imagined that that would be possible. And yet we have Tamani Kamara. And so you set it up like, what are all defensive players look like? What are their skill sets? 10 years into the league. They're huge. They get a lot of block shots. And then you look at the stats for Tamani Kamara, and it's this surprise, and the story is so cool. And I love telling that story through stats, but also, you know, some of my best work is, I think, less reliant on stats and just telling you the story of how Tamani came to be, or how my producers they love how much I liked W.H.A.T.
We
I
love
loved WAP.
love
He's
him.
he's so great, and I just think he has an incredible story. And if I can tell that story of South Sudan and being a refugee and coming back to Australia and making it to the NBA, it's like he has one of the most unique stories and also one of the most unique games, like a stretch five, who's that skilled and got into the NBA that's so late. I love to tell that story through stats, but also don't forget about the personal story, that human story that really uh, I think will connect with a lot of people.
Hmm. Yeah, we are big fans of diving into the story of the players and where they came from and how they got, because everybody has a different story on how they got there. And we especially have a soft spot for big men. And so like we did a deep dive on, DeAndre Ayton and where he came from and how he came to the game. We're always really interested in how players come to the game. A lot of them have
Mhm.
lore around them, like Yusuf Nurkic and his dad, who beat up the nine players, and the scout showing up at his dad's doorstep saying, "Do you have a son who plays basketball?" There's a lot of lore, especially around centers, that we think is really fascinating.
Yeah, I think my favorite player in the NBA history. We have the same birthday. We went to the same college. Uh, I think he's the most underappreciated story in sports. My mom used to say, I want to meet his mom because I can't even fathom how hard it is to encourage your kid who's 5'3" and say, hey, you can make it in the NBA, son. Like, to be how much support she would have to give and how much love and encouragement that she would give to keep that dream alive and support your son. Muggsy Bogues
Hmm.
is such a cool story. And the fact that someone who's 5'3" didn't just make it into the NBA, but played for 10 plus years and was a starter, I think is in a game of giants, you have this David out there. And I have his jersey, like when I do the games in my office, I have his jersey on the wall, and it just my mom passed away about a year ago, and so whenever I have that on the wall, I think about the underdog and how how important it is to have that chip on your shoulder to tell that story of like I have something to prove and don't count me out, all that stuff. It all comes back to that story that we always like to tell ourselves is like I am somebody and I have something to prove. And you can't tell me that I can't be on an NBA broadcast if I didn't play in the NBA. And my mom is always. I always think about her all the time. She always believed in me to chase my own dreams. My dad is a business. He owns a financial firm that he's been running for I don't know 20 some odd years. My older brothers both work for him. And my mom always encouraged me to go and do my own thing. And so she always says that not me graduating in that financial crisis was the best thing to ever happen to me because it allowed me to chase my passion and my dream, which is to be a sports writer and to cover sports, to be on TV and be on a broadcast. Like the Blazers are giving me in many ways a childhood dream is that I can go out and talk about basketball for a living with such a special team and such a special organization.
You said you lost your mom about a year ago. I'm really sorry. Did she get to watch you? I mean, you've been doing this for years. Did she watch you for years on TV? And, was she one of those moms who didn't miss a broadcast? And also, did you turn into a Blazer fan?
Oh yeah, well, my daughters have Blazer stuff. They love the Blazers. I unfortunately, as part of my national like writing and stuff, I have to like compartmentalize my Blazer stuff. I can't say that I'm a. It's hard. It's hard. I have a really. I don't know if fan is the right word, but I have a real love for the Blazers. There's a certain passion that the fan base has. My mom, again, I keep bringing her up, but she's a real big influence for me. Um, she always rooted for the underdog. Like in whenever we have the NCAA tournament on, she'd be like, "Who's the underdog? I'm rooting for them." She always wanted to stick up for the underdog, and so I think the Blazers, being a small market team, the only NBA team, the only professional team of the four major sports in Portland, I think in many ways it embodies a lot of the same spirit that I like to attribute to myself. Is that underdog spirit that my mom always instilled in me. So, did she watch my games? I have this shirt on. I was just thinking about this. End ALS for Lou. So she had ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, and so at towards the end of her life, when I was with the Blazers, she wasn't able to watch the games as much as I would have liked, but I would show her clips, and she it's such a horrible disease where you slowly get paralyzed over time, but you could see her smile, like you could see the creases in her smile, and she would really light up when I would show her this stuff because I think she knew at a young age I was really into this stuff. I was really into it, and to see my work on a Blazers broadcast, on an NBA broadcast, was really, really cool. And she really got a kick out of that. So, um, and the games are late, Tara. East
Yeah.
Coast. My family's on the East Coast. She ain't staying up till 11 o'clock watching these games. So my Haberstat, they always come. I don't know if you guys have picked up on this. They always come at the second timeout in the first quarter. So we have Brooke Olzendam does her like interview hit at the first time TV timeout, and then I come in with my Haberstat. I take, as Greg Fonseca, my beloved producer, says, Tom, you're going to take us out of the break here. Hit us with your Haberstat. Then go to the tape, explain the play, and then wrap it, tag it, and then send it back to Kevin. And so I don't know why I'm giving you the whole playbook here, but the broadcast is it's great, and doing it at night, like
You're
I put my kids to
tired.
I put my kids to bed, and then I start my second shift. I have the day job, then I put my girls to bed. I have dinner with my wife, and then I go out to the office and I do the broadcast. So if I come off a little tired, it's because the game's at like midnight here. Sorry.
Yeah. I stayed up when I went to the East Coast and I watched a Timbers soccer game and I did that one time and I was like never again. So if anybody on the East Coast can watch a Blazer game and do it regularly, I am absolutely in awe of that. And
Yeah.
not are you just watching it, but you're reporting on them live. So that's amazing. And I'm so glad that your mom was able to see the clips of you doing what you loved. That's so important
Yes.
to
Yeah.
moms. So
Oh
important.
yeah. Oh yeah. She just wanted to make sure I was okay, and at peace and chasing my dreams, and she always wanted me to do that, and I can say wholeheartedly that I absolutely am driven by that. And yeah, my cousin, so her brother's daughter lives in Hillsborough, and I'm gonna be going out there, Tara, for in studio when the Blazers go on like an 8 game road trip in
Yeah, that's
early
coming up
March.
soon.
Yep. Um, I'm gonna be going to the studio with Neil and Jamie and do some games in the studio. So I'll be doing pregame and do my normal in-game hits, and then halftime and postgame in Portland. So that'll be fun.
Oh, that's fun. I hope we have like, good weather relatively for you. What is good
Please,
weather
because
anymore,
last
right?
year when I came, it was the DeAndre Ayton got stuck in his house week. I came out there for that. It was a Brooklyn
Yep.
and Indiana game, and I came out there and the whole city shut down.
Yeah, okay, so somebody from the outside, what was your impression of the conditions?
You can't mess with ice. Like, I don't care. Like,
Especially
I'm
if you're
from the
7 feet
Northeast.
tall.
Yeah, like it doesn't matter at that point. It doesn't matter. In fact, I'd venture to guess that being 7 feet tall is probably worse on ice than someone who's 5 feet tall. I would just venture to guess that. I don't know physics on that,
That much
but
farther to fall.
yeah. And like, you don't see any 7 foot ice skaters out there. You don't, you
No,
know?
no.
So as someone who grew up in the Northeast and dealt with blizzards and stuff, when you have an inch of ice covering blanketing the entire city, that's
Mhm.
no joke. You can't. I don't care how much money you have or how many SUVs you have. If you live in a place up on a hill or down or whatever it is, like you're stuck. I'm sorry.
Yeah, people who've lived here long enough, we all had DeAndre Ayton's back. We all knew exactly what was going on.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was
Um,
crazy.
so you have been out to Portland before. You've probably been out to Portland, many times. Um, but as you've started to cover the team, is there anything about the team or about just Rip City in general that you've learned has surprised you that you didn't know? Any nuggets that you've discovered about who we are out here?
Well, I think the whole Rip City, the name of it, is really cool story. I think as an NBA fan, I didn't appreciate it that it just was like this organic thing that happened and then it just stuck. And I don't think many NBA fans, even if they cover the NBA, don't really know the origins of that. So that right there, Bill Walton. Dr. Jack Ramsey, his son was my boss at ESPN. Chris Ramsey
Hmm.
was my boss when I was a ESPN.com writer. My boss was Chris Ramsey, and he was just the nicest guy. I love Chris Ramsey, and he is one of my favorite bosses I've ever had. And he told me stories about his father and all this stuff. And I think it's just when you start a franchise and you have Bill Walton and Dr. Jack together, that's just like the stuff of dreams, you know? And the energy, the uh, just the outlook on life. It's something that you can't really. There's this alchemy of the origins of the Blazers franchise is so cool. And I grew up a huge Red Sox fan in the shadows of New York, and I just love the whole like chip on your shoulder underdog aspect of Portland. The brewery scene, I love that with whenever I go out to Portland. Um, I don't think I have like a favorite brewery, but I love visiting because the food is so great. Khan from Gregory Gourdet, I'm a huge Top Chef fan, and having that restaurant open now is great. You know, one of the best things that the Blazers ever did, besides bringing me into their office, they they were like, "Hey Tom, where do you want to go out to dinner tonight?" And I was like, I don't know." They were like, "How does con sound?" I was like, "Oh my God." It like blew my mind that they were like, take me out to this place that like I revere. Gregory Gourdet is like one of the best chefs in America, and he's in Portland, and he opened up his restaurant, and it was one of the coolest things about eating there, Tara, was that a bunch of Blazers employees were there too eating. So the Blazers love that place, and it's a great spot. And I don't know, I love going out to Portland. So I'll be going out there early March. And so if you see me around, say hello to anyone
Cool.
who's listening. And I will be at the arena while they're on the road. So I'll be out and about. And I can't wait. I love Portland.
One of the things that the when Damian Lillard left Portland, there were a lot of shocking things about that. But one of the most shocking things to many Blazer fans that I know was that we learned that his whole entire time that he was in Oregon, he never went to the Oregon coast. And so, if you can, I would
Yes.
highly recommend making that 90-minute
How
drive
is
to the coast.
how is that possible? How is that possible?
He said it at some point. And so now, like, every time any Blazer, like Donovan Clingan, like, went to the beach immediately, and everyone was like, he's already been to the beach and he's only been on the team for a week. Jeremy
Yeah.
Grant just went there during, or it appears that he went there during All-Star break and shared all these classic pictures of many coastal places. And everyone's like, see, Jeremy's heart's already always been here.
Well, yeah, the Goonies, right? The
Astoria.
Goonies. Yeah, so I know. Well, actually, the coach that I got closest with in the NBA is Eric Spoelstra,
Oh.
and he's
hmm
from Portland, and he always goes back and loves going back.
hmm
Um, and I remember when I was covering the Miami Heat in 2010, 2011, 2012, he just kept glowing about Portland as a city. And so maybe it's karma that I'm working on the Blazers broadcast after how much Eric Spoelstra was talking about what an awesome city Portland is.
Yeah, it could be. Could be some kind of a thing in the back of your head there. One,
Hmm.
this I guess isn't really a Haberstat, but one thing that has always struck me is how all, and this happens in any NBA city, but all of the players who were born here while their parents were on the team, where their dad was on the team, like Jeremy Grant is one of them. But all over the NBA, it's always fun to be like, "Oh, he was born in Portland," because that's
Yeah.
where his dad played when he
Well,
was born.
so I'm glad you brought this up because I think, man, Sabonis,
hmm
Harvey, um, there's a third one on that team, but they're all fathers of like sons are in the NBA right now,
Yeah,
and maybe was it Greg Anthony?
Peyton?
I don't know,
No,
but
not
there's
Peyton.
there's like a team on the Blazers where like four dads,
hmm
fathers of NBA, players, and those. Can you imagine those kids just bopping around in the locker room and then now they're in the NBA? I mean, that is
Yeah.
so cool, and they were all on the same team. I'm
No,
looking this up
I was
now.
gonna say Clay Thompson, but no, his dad didn't play here, but he was here for a while.
Okay, so this
Kevin
is gonna
Love,
be.
but anyway.
Hold on. I'm gonna do this. I've
Okay.
got it. All right. So Gary Trent. All right.
That
Gary
was Gary
Trent was
Trent.
on.
Yes.
Gary Trent, Harvey Grant, and Arvydas Sabonis were in on the '96 team
hmm
together. And then, yeah, I think that is the team that I was
Yeah.
thinking of in my head, where it was just like there were kids everywhere.
Yeah.
Uh, oh yeah, Gary Grant and Brian Grant were on the same team. Okay. All right, yeah. So that team, that '96 team, had three. Harvey Grant, Arvydas Sabonis, and Gary Trent all had sons who went on to become NBA players, which is really cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And two of the three have played in Portland. Well, so that kind of leads me to another question I had of like, if you had a time machine and could go back and cover a Blazers team, or is there any specific era that you'd like to go back and be the analytics insider for?
Oh, I think it would be for me. It's ooh, I'm gonna have to go with the '92 team. Um,
That
I
was my
just as
team.
a yeah, I
Yeah.
mean that's an amazing team to cover. I also think just like they were one of the great three-point shooting teams, and I've always had it gravitated towards that. And having Terry Porter, who is maybe 10 best shooters ever to grace this earth, having that team and the characters, that would be a lot of fun. And the way that, man, that's a that's an incredible team.
I love that
And
team.
facing the Bulls in the finals in '92, that's a remarkable team to cover.
The Terry Porter made me appreciate CJ McCollum because I remember after I was a huge Clyde Drexler fan. I was all about Clyde Drexler. I thought Clyde Drexler was the greatest thing, which he was. He was awesome. And that whole team, Clyde and oh, Jerome Kersey, don't even get me started how
Yeah,
much I loved him.
yeah.
But Clyde was the guy. And then after they all split up and they went away, I was like, Dang, I like totally like did not appreciate Terry Porter while he was here. And I never forgot that.
Yep.
So while Dame and CJ were there, I always made sure that I like focused a little bit on CJ to make sure I appreciated what CJ brought because Dame was such a huge, massive presence that this other guy who played alongside him, I just wanted to make sure that I appreciated him enough because I didn't appreciate Terry Porter enough.
It's hard to give love to everybody in the
Yeah.
same way, you know? I totally feel that. And that's what's so cool about this team that I get to cover now is I don't know who's gonna have those same bonds that
Yeah.
CJ and Dame did, but I know it's gonna happen. Like whether it's Klingon and Kamara or if it's Avdia and Scoot, like those duos and those teammates, they could be the founding the building blocks for the next awesome star duo for the Blazers.
Yeah, and we would sure all like to know who that's going to be, but you can't
Yeah.
rush it. I mean, that's the problem. And one of the things that I don't know that if you've ever picked up on this, but one of the things that me and my friends who are Blazer fans, we talk about a lot is that like Damian was here for 11 years, and that was like all we remember, really. I mean, it was like obviously we've been fans through the ages, but recency biased is just like the last 10 years. It was like they played the same kind of basketball. They had the same kind of like leader who knew exactly how to lead the locker room. And there was just all this stuff that we took for granted and thought that that's just how basketball teams were. And when that was gone, we've all just kind of been at sea, or those of us who like me, we've been at sea for the last couple of years, just going, when is this gonna like calm down into something that we recognize as whatever the new
Mhm.
reality is?
Yeah, and I feel that too is going in. This was the case last year. This year is totally different. Like this year, the Blazers have our top five most healthiest team in the NBA. And I know DA just got hurt, and so that's unfortunate. But the injury bug that just decimated the team last year, it's been kept at bay for most of this season, and league wide, they are top five healthiest team in the NBA by games lost due to injury, and you feel that is there's a lot more consistency this year, and Chauncey Billups has talked a lot about it. Tara, as you know, is just like last year was kind of a blur. It was new players, totally new team that you just were trying to figure out who's who. And this year they finally have figured out like the chemistry has been in sync. The defense has an identity. Tamani is so fun to watch, and you're starting to see it. Avdia, I don't know what the ceiling is on that guy. I feel like Denny is so strong and he has this fire about him where he just like I'm gonna go at the basket and I'm gonna plow through everybody that's in my way is such an uncommon characteristic for an NBA player to have. Usually they're afraid of contact. Usually they're like, I don't want to get hurt. Like I don't want to get dirty out there. I'm good. I'm just gonna take this little like mid-range jumper. Denny's like, I'm gonna bulldoze through you. And I love his game. Tamani, it's a really exciting team to cover because they're growing and they're getting better. And I know it's cliche, but like this is a developmental year, and I do see them developing and adding new skills, and they're getting some national acclaim now, which is really exciting. Tamani just read a great story by Fred Katz in The Athletic. He just had a big section of his story about Tamani Kamara, and I think it's I don't know. I'm not having the same experience as you are as a fan, as you know, this is my job and this
Yeah.
is, the broadcast. But I get excited when I see them do new things, or that Donovan Klingon's shooting threes, or if it's Denny Avdia playing the five, or if it's doing things that like are a little bit out of their comfort zone. It's fun to see, and I don't know. Denny's just a really I just love him on this team. It was a great move by the front office to get him.
Yeah, he's been really enjoyable. And there was a point earlier, so there was a point earlier in the season where like two missed a few games and Denny then also missed a few games. I can't remember who missed him first, but they each like right in a row missed like 3 or 4 games. And I remember when two missed the games, it was like, oh, the defense is like,
Hmm.
whoa. But when Denny missed the game, they looked lost.
Yeah, completely lost,
It
right?
was just
Yep.
like Oh, oh, okay.
He is
He,
the straw that stirs the drink for sure.
yeah, for sure. That really surprised me. Well, I want to make sure I get a chance to ask you Rose's question because she sent in a question for me to ask you. Um, and so here we go. This is okay. Professional team sports have periodically added new statistics to better capture team play or individual player contributions through quantitative data. She's a data person. For
Oh,
example,
shouts to Rose.
steals
Yes.
were not added to the NBA ABA until 1973. I should add she's not like in her profession, she's a data person, not a basketball data person.
Mm,
um, for the context. Anyway, for example, steals were not added to the NBA ABA until 1973. Team turnovers were added the same year, but individual turnovers were not added until 1977. What new statistic or revision of an existing NBA statistic do you think would add to our understanding of the modern game?
great question,
Isn't it?
Rose.
See, I told you she's like really good with this stuff.
Wow. Okay. Two things. Right now, my heart rate is 58 beats per minute. I would love to know what NBA players' beat heart rate is in certain points of the game. I think that is so telling about their stress levels and their cortisol or their uh I think Anthony Simons in clutch situations is super cool. Like his heart rate is super low. And when your heart rate is spiking, then you start making some bad decisions and your heart is racing. And I think heart rate, we don't have that information. I don't know if the players union would ever sign off on something like that. But other leagues, sports leagues around the world, professional sports leagues they have heart rate trackers on players, athletes, and you learn a lot. You learn a lot about when they're at the free throw line, which players are losing it. They're freaking out at the free throw line. You can see it in their data, in their heart rate data, and also you learn there some players just are totally cool. Their heart rate is super low. They're super chill. They're not stressed out, and it shows in their clutch performance. Why Anthony Simons, I think, is so good in the clutch is because he's so even keel all the time. And so I think heart rate would really lend our understanding about why players perform better in big situations, and why they're able to increase their performance when everyone else's are tightening up. They're actually getting loose. I think that's one thing. The other thing is something I'm working on that I hope to have on a broadcast in the next week. Um, stop percentage, or stops, defensive stops. So she mentioned steals in there. You know, we keep talking about how good Tamani Kamara is at drawing offensive fouls or drawing charges. Well, why in the box score do we have steals and blocks, but we don't have those two? You know, charges and offensive fouls drawn because those are stops. The
Hmm.
possession ends. Like when LeBron is pushing Tamane Kamara and it's a foul, that's a steal. Like, why is that not a quote unquote steal? It should be, but it's not counted as a steal. And when he takes a charge, that's a steal too. It ends the possession and it steals the ball away, and then the Blazers get it. So in the box score, we have those two columns for the defensive stats. It's steals and blocks. But we also should have offensive fouls drawn and uh, and charges. And those are two separate categories that we can track now publicly, but it's not part of the box score. So if you did this, and I did this preliminarily a few days ago, Tamani Kamara would be top three in the NBA in that category. So if you included his
Are you talking
offensive,
overall stops? If all
yeah,
those
stops.
four different categories were considered a stop.
And if he were top three in that category, and that was part of the box score, he would get a lot more votes for all defense. I'm positive of it. If there was a national official statistic called stops, Tamani Kamara would make all defense. But because the things that he's are excelling at in offensive fouls drawn and charges that are not counted in the box score, I feel like his contributions defensively are being missed. And we see it. We watch every game. We see what he's such a menace defensively, but it's lost in the box score. And I think if you had stops as opposed to steals and blocks, you had like a separate category that just said, hey, because literally he had 5 steals in the game on Thursday night. I think it was 1 or 2 offensive fouls drawn and a charge. So he would have had 7 stops against the Lakers. And that's awesome. And we should know that. And I think that would raise our level of understanding for defense. And the third thing on that, blocks recovered. So blocks are great. Block shots are great. But a
If you
lot
keep
of
it
times you got to keep it.
or
These
tip it
guys,
to your own person.
they swat it out of bounds and the ball goes right back to the other
Yeah.
team. It's like, yeah,
I call
like
that a summer league block, the kind of block that goes 10 rows up.
yeah, yeah, summer league block. There's some guys, and the Blazers are really good at this. So like, I don't think it's them so much, but block recovery is better than a block. And I think players that Tim Duncan was great. Shout out to Wake Forest Demon Deacons, but Tim Duncan was great and popularized this. He was the big fundamental. He would block the shot and then just gather it, right? And so that I think is another trait that I think Blazers are underrated because they don't swat it into the 10th row like you might at summer league.
I can't tell you how much I love watching Donovan Clingan get a block and the ball. Like
Yeah, he like
I don't know when the last time was that we had a center who regularly did that.
just snarls it. He just like grabs the ball out and
Yeah,
just like brings it in. How cool is that? And he's a
I
rookie.
love
He's
that.
20 years old and he's doing that, you know?
Yeah, no, I think that is
You
lovely. I love watching that happen. And I think Rose would be really excited to hear your answer. She and I had like a text thread, with regards to this question, and she was talking about how assists, when you talk about, and I don't want to like speak for her, but I'll just relay this to you, that screen assists, like nobody, like in the box score, nobody gets credit for those. Like when a screener frees up somebody so they can actually get a shot off, in some ways that's more of an assist than a person who passed it to you and then you took 8 dribbles and got the ball in.
Yep. And there I can't we used to track it. I think screen assists were doing a better job of
They're in
tracking
there, but
that.
they're like you have to go hunting for that. You have to remember like
Mm-hmm.
which is it under tracking or is it under like
Mm-hmm.
hustle plays or whatever. It's not part of
Yep.
the box score. Like you're saying stops should be part of the box score. I love that.
Yes. Yes. And it's intuitive. It's not like it's a fancy schmancy stat. It's something that is so ingrained in basketball. It's very basic
Hmm.
and I think it would unveil a lot of hidden value that Tamani brings
Hmm.
to a game. And you hear Damian Lillard talking about it, just how awesome he is defending, and that's one of the reasons why he is so impactful as a defender.
I wish you could have spent some time covering the Blazers when Damien was here because that was a real fun ride.
Oh, I I feel it. I feel it on the broadcast. Every time we do those like fan shout outs where Brooke
Yeah.
gives a lifelong fan who talks about their favorite plays, and all of them are Damian Lillard. All of them have Damian Lillard memories that are just right up there. And I did cover the Houston Rockets shot. I was there for that, covering it for ESPN. And that's kind of when it like took off was Damian Lillard's clutch, Dame time and all that. That's like that I'll never forget that shot. And it was bonkers.
Yeah. And we'll never forget that he has 2 of those shots. And like
Yeah.
when Damian left, and I'm not even gonna go into the fact that you used to cover Miami. But when he left, me and my friends, our big thing was is we wanted to make sure that on his way out, whatever happened, we wanted to make sure that it never made it so that he wouldn't feel welcome to come back. Not that he's necessarily ever gonna come back, but we wanted to really make sure that there was no bad blood between him and the fans and complaining because we want to always have room for him to come back. He always has a place at the table, let's say, for Damian Lillard. Okay, I have two. Do you have time for me to like make one comment and then one kind of like
Sure.
question? Okay, one
Sure.
comment. So Wake Forest, I just have to mention this. Wake Forest also happens to be the school that one of my personal favorite players, Farouq Aminu, went to. I'm
Oh,
a
Chief. Yeah.
huge Chief fan. Nobody loved Chief more than me when he was on the Blazers.
That's amazing. He and I went to college together.
Oh, you were there
I
at the
want to
same
say.
time?
Yeah, I was there with Chris Paul. I was there with James Johnson, Jeff Teague. I was there for that like group, Al Farouq Aminu, and that class was so good. And I'm so glad that Chief had like a real home here in Portland and became beloved here. It's great.
I
He's a great dude.
I loved him. I had the Alpha Amino or the Amino Appreciation Society. I had a little logo that I would post every time he did something amazing. I had shirts
What?
made.
Why? What is it like? Can you
Yeah,
explain why you gravitate
I
to
can tell
certain
you
players?
exactly why I loved him. I called him the beautiful butterfly because he would create absolute chaos on one end of the court, and you never knew what would happen on the other.
Yeah,
It might
yeah.
be that he created a turnover and somebody else got the ball and they went down and scored it. It might have been like, God forbid, he got the ball and made the fast break and everybody just held their breath and was like, oh no. And then he would score or not score. I just love the beautiful chaos that he created and how nobody knew what was ever going to happen.
Yeah. No, that's 100% true. And he
And that
that's
shot
really
that's like, how did he even see the ball?
really unorthodox shot. Yeah.
And he
I don't
just
know
seemed
how it
like a
works, but it
super,
works.
yeah, he just seemed like such a super chill guy. I
Yes.
remember one time he was being interviewed and because like I said, we do these deep dives on players all the time. He was being interviewed and somebody asked him a question about like his wife and he goes, "Yeah, my wife taught me that. She's so cool." I was just like, oh, that's the cutest thing. Anyway, so a random thing. So that was my one random thing. My other for a stat that I think would is really interesting that I think would be interesting to interrogate if it's still what we want it to be. I don't think crunch time is within 5 points in 5 minutes. I think it should be 2 points in 2 minutes.
Oh, I hear you. Yeah,
Okay,
I endorse.
thank
I
you.
endorse. So the NBA created that.
Yeah, the
So
five
that's
points in five
them.
minutes.
They said 5 points in 5 minutes, but
That's an
uh
eternity.
that's it. I don't think it should start at five. There's
No.
not enough swing in it. Too much. Too much can happen.
It's an
These back.
eternity.
I would do. So we can do like those clutch stats. I used to call it like clutch, super clutch, and like mega clutch.
Yeah.
Like have different titles for it as you got closer to the end of the game, and I hear you. But then I'd have to see if Simons is as good as he is when we start drilling down because he's really good in those clutch situations, and then I have to see what those numbers look like. But I hear you, and there's leverage. There's like leverage statistics that we can hit on, but it's harder to explain on the air. And that's one thing I really try to do, and it's something I got to work on is having advanced stats that are snackable that you can eat quickly and not have to sit there watching the game being like, what did he just say? Like
Yeah.
I don't want you to be thinking about math when you're
Yeah.
watching one of my hits. I want you to be thinking, wow, I didn't know that about Denny, or I didn't know that about Klingon, or I didn't know that about Scoot. And it's intuitive. And that's one of the tricks that I have to work on all the time as quote unquote the analytics guy is finding things that are advanced, but they don't feel advanced. Make it approachable, accessible information. Because I do think analytics is a buzzword for a lot of people. Is it has carries a stigma that screams calculus and math and numbers. I want it to just be information that sheds light on your favorite player that you didn't know before. And that's what I want to bring every broadcast is come in with a number, come in with an insight, information, a little nugget that will make you go, "Huh, that's really cool. I didn't know that Scoot could do that, or I didn't know that he was really good at X. I want that. I don't want you to feel like it's homework. I don't want you to feel like you have a calculus textbook out or a calculator out, because that to me is not basketball. I want you to feel like you're watching and enjoying these amazing athletes and amazing basketball players. And I think it's super cool that the Blazers have opened up this position. There's no other analytics insider in the NBA, and I'm just super lucky to be part of Aaron Grossman and the whole crew and Greg Fonseca and I just love this job. I have like four jobs right now, and I keep telling my wife I'm like my favorite one I get to do is the Blazers one. It brings me so much joy.
Oh, that is wonderful to hear. And I want to thank you for your time because with your four jobs, you're a very, very busy person. And I'm just so glad that you were able to spend a little time with me tonight and that Blazer fans can listen and learn a little bit more about you. I don't want to be here all night, but could you list some of the places where people can find your work?
Oh,
It might take a
yeah.
while, but
So I'll first off, Hoops for ALS. It's an initiative that I do in honor of my mom. Hoops number four ALS. You can follow us on Instagram, hoopsforals.com. We are an organization that tries to raise awareness and funds for ALS research through basketball. And it's a horrible disease. And Michael Lynch, who used to be on the radio side for the Blazers, is battling ALS right now. Great guy, and we're doing some work to try to spread the word and bring more awareness to the disease, Lou Gehrig's disease, because Lou Gehrig did play baseball, but there are plenty of people in basketball, the basketball community that unfortunately have been battling this disease. And so I do that, and that's really close to my heart. Yahoo Sports, I write and do podcasts on Yahoo Sports. And Blazers, of course. Count the dings, basketball Illuminati. You say it three times to keep your third eye open. It's really fun thing that I get to do with them. And my Substack, tomthefinder.com. It's where I kind of I just do my writing and some of my offbeat stories, some of the non-basketball stories, or I wrote a tribute a letter to my mom. You can find that on tomthefinder.com if you'd like to read that. And yeah, it's it's a really fun time to be working on the Blazers because there Damian Lillard was incredible. But I think a lot of times you would watch a game and you kind of already know what you're going to see. This team, you turn it on and you're like, I don't know what Klingon's going to do tonight. He could get 20 rebounds and seven blocks, and like that's possible with this team. And I really love that this team is so young, second youngest team in the NBA. And if you watch that graphic I did about LeBron it was on Thursday night where I did three Blazers players were not born when LeBron made his debut.
wow.
And that Shaden Sharp and Jabari Walker were in their diapers when LeBron did his debut. So that's the type of stuff I love bringing to the broadcast, and I love doing this, Tara. So next time we can do it, and Rose will be there, and I'd love to do it again sometime.
Wonderful. Thanks so much again for your time. Everybody knows where they can find me and Rose. We're on Blue Sky, and you can find the We Have a Take
Yeah, I'm on Blue
podcast.
Sky too. I'm there, and I get a lot more like feedback from there during the games, and so I find myself posting there during games a lot more in between hits. So
I
I'm
hope you
on there.
have
Tom Haberstra at Blue Sky. Yeah,
awesome. And I hope you have a wonderful time when you're in Portland and then you get some amazing meals and then you can talk about them on your various places. And, just in case any potential free agents are listening and they want to know what the food scene is like, right?
that's right. That's
Oh, wait,
right.
but you can't
And
do that
there
because you work for the team. So never mind. Cancel that.
they no, I will spread the word, the gospel of Portland food and beers and all the great arts in Portland and it's a great city, and
Do you get to
I
bring your
can't wait to go
family
there.
out?
I'm trying,
I hope you
the
can someday.
I'm so I went there for a wedding. My friend, Coop Moorhead, who also, by the way, Miami. There's some good people in Miami. All
I'm sure
right,
there
Tara,
are.
I'm
I
telling
believe
you.
it. I believe it.
He's from Portland. Went to high school in Portland. And he is the content. He runs the content for MiamiHeat.com. Um, he got married out there to his lovely wife Reese, and I had an amazing time. And I also learned that there's nothing better than Portland in the summer. And so I'm gonna have to bring my family out in the summertime. As much as I love winter basketball, I would probably win some more points if I did it in the summertime, right, Tara?
Yeah, I mean, and that's what we always say. We always say that NBA players need to come to Portland in the summertime so they can see what it's like, and that it's not just like, everybody leaves and it's like that's the best time of year. Anyway,
Yeah.
Tom, thank you so much for your time. You've given more than I already asked of you. So thank you so much and go Blazers. I can say that.
Yeah. Yeah.